outcast in your school. You can be outcast amongst an assembly of friends. But today, the message is that Christ is concerned about how you are treated, and he comes to see about it. What I love about this particular passage is that because leprosy was a disease that caused you to be outcast, they would not even allow you to live in the community anymore, to the point they would ostracize you, put you out, say you can never come back unless a preacher deems that you are healed. And so anybody with leprosy, the only way you were able to re-enter the community is that you had to go show yourself to a priest. The priest had to look over you, evaluate you, and then consider you cleansed of your disease. And if a priest never did it, you were never allowed back into the society. Well, maybe you didn't catch it in the reading by Minister Tucker, but there's something peculiar about this passage, because Jesus gave this man that very instruction. He tells him, I'm going to heal you of your leprosy, but when I do it, I want you to go show yourself to the priest, as is commanded by Moses, so you'll be allowed back in the community. What is so wonderful about this passage, I think? I know it's for many saying he didn't follow Jesus' instructions. Because Jesus told him to go show himself to the priest. He was so happy he was healed, he told everybody about it. And I don't know about you, but I think that that's a testament to the 21st century church. We're doing more lawful abiding than love abiding. We'd rather be right according to the law than to just tell somebody about the good news of Jesus Christ. Already, we haven't even had 2 days of sharing and interacting with these ladies from Caritas, and already they're saying, no one has treated us like this church. You greeted us getting off the bus. You hugged us getting off the bus. You didn't look like you were doing us a favor. You made us feel at home. I don't know if anybody's ever been in a place like that, but the worst thing you can do is be around people and people don't make you feel like they want you around. All right. That's a lonely feeling. That's a feeling that can lead to depression, make you think less of yourself. But in this text, can you really see what the leopard man was going through? I'm already ostracized from society, and a man takes the time to do something that he's not supposed to do. He touched me. Scripture says he touched the man. The touch didn't heal him. The touch was for compassion. And I don't know about you, but if you're having a bad day, you got tears in your eyes, you got something heavy on your heart, there's nothing that ministers to you more than a human being touching you at that moment. All right. Stroking you on the shoulder or just touching your hand, rubbing it gently, saying, it's going to be all right. They don't have to give you guidelines, details. Just the human touch is healing enough. And if the church could learn one thing in the 21st century, we don't always have to pour a whole bottle of oil on people. Sometimes you just have to touch them with genuine compassion and concern, and people will know they are loved. And so he shares this. And the text says that when the man realizes he's healed, he stops his journey towards the priest. And he starts telling everybody he meets what the Lord has done for him. I want you to know I'm that person you casted out. But as you see, no more signs. I don't know if anybody will catch that, but that's enough right there to know Jesus can make your situation look totally different. When others have written you off, God will write you back in. Just when people thought that the University of Louisville would lose one of its key players, something else happened. You see, some people get all caught up in brackets. We get all caught up in the basketball game and the semantics of it all. But in that one fleeting moment where that tragic injury occurs to this young man, we really see what life is all about. That 5 basketball players immediately could not continue the game of basketball. They immediately fell to the floor in anguish over the hurt of their fallen comrade. How often in the church and in our community, when somebody falls, does it cause us to stop? Does it cause us to stop going to the mall for that special? How often when we hear of somebody going through tragic circumstances, does it cause us to stop at what we already have planned for ourselves and just for a moment feel, sympathize, and empathize with the hurt and tragedy of another? Here in this text, we see what true human love and compassion is really all about. Caring for somebody else. Now, I wish we had time to deal with it because this passage does not. But the important thing is that this man goes from being an outcast and a leopard man, a diseased man of the community, to being the greatest witness for Jesus in the neighborhood. Because the text concludes by saying that he told people everywhere, and people from everywhere came to see about Jesus. As a matter of fact, I know many of you don't know this, so I'll give it to you for free. It's a theological point. Jesus was not to give out who he was at this time. But because one man's testimony about how great God is in his son, Jesus Christ, the time that Jesus said it was not had to be because one man told so many people about Jesus. Did you hear me? There are people saying that our world is still messed up from the floor up. But I would say, have you told anybody? There are persons who are going around talking about we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But I would respond, have you told anybody? There are persons saying that the basic nucleus of the family, the husband, the wife, the basic unit of the family is being tore up from the floor up. But I would still say, is there anybody telling anybody about Jesus? Because whenever Jesus is talked about, human conditions change for the better. I know that for many persons, when you first tell them, they look at you strange. I know some of those young ladies today, when I told them, trust that God is going to minister to you this week, some of them went out there knowing, I just don't see how. I just don't see how. But if they ever embrace Jesus, they'll see him come in, and the scripture says he'll come in their lives right early. And so this morning, I just wanted to leave with you this important piece of instruction from Jesus. This month, we'll be talking about what it really means to practice forgiveness and love. And we do it 4 ways. Number 1, we proclaim the message. Number 2, we do it by ministering what is called diakonos, serving. Serving. The first thing Jesus says, accept my son. The second thing he says, if you accept me, is to serve. The third thing he says is to evangelize, which means to tell people about him. And the fourth thing he says is fulfill my word. In our passage today, we see the first aspect of true Christian work, and that is preach. Now, probably everybody has written me off except the pulpit. But the word preach, in its original language and writing from the text, when he says don't tell, the word is kerygma. Kerygma. Any preacher, when he hears that word, he or she knows what that is. It is the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. How many of us understand that Jesus has commanded all of us to talk about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus? And how do we do that? I would call on the leopard man to witness today and help us understand kerygma. Because what happens to this man who has been outcast from society, where he's gotten downtrodden, where he no longer has hope or faith in the church or church people, he comes to understand that as long as I got Jesus, I got everything I need. And beyond all the glorification of the church and what the church can provide, and I would caution many persons who put their faith and hope in the church in certain places. Some of us put more emphasis in certain areas of the church. The bottom line, the church is about one thing, preaching Christ and him crucified. And if you can't tell somebody about Jesus, maybe you're putting too much emphasis on the wrong aspect of church. Because Jesus says, all I want you to do is tell folk. Look how easy he makes it. Tell folk what I've done for you. He tried to explain it to this leopard man. I know that I touched you. I know that you feel belong and loved now. I know that you realize you looked at your hands look new. You looked at your feet, they look new too. I know you want to tell everybody, but it's just not my time yet. I want you to know we learned a valuable lesson today. The right time is always the time to tell somebody about Jesus. Even when somebody says, I don't want to hear it. You need to plant the seed. It may not germinate and take root on the day that you plant, but in due season. The scriptures declare and promise that a harvest will occur if we don't lose faith. Here is a man of leprosy, cast out, cast away. And I wish I had time, so you're just going to have to believe me. But this man left the place that he was supposed to stay in. Leopard persons were supposed to stay in one part of the community and never leave it. That's right. But he left it to find Jesus. And in leaving, watch the text, he does not find Jesus, Jesus finds him. If we could ever teach people to have the will to fight, I know that things are not right in your life, but just be willing to fight. I know that you've tried, and every time you try, you come up short, but trust me, if you reach for the right door, Jesus is standing there. And he's knocking, and he's ready to come out. All he wants from us is our ability to trust him. Now, if you trust him, and never doubt. The song says he will bring you out. I don't know of anybody that's ever been handled by Christ where their witness and report is he failed me. I don't know of anybody who can honestly say when Jesus truly responded in their life, I waited on him, he answered me, and his answer was not sufficient. Whenever Jesus responds, it's always what we need. It's always right on time. And I don't know about you, but I'm willing to testify for you for free. And whenever he does it, my cup runs over. He never does just enough of what I ask. He puts more into it than what I even thought or asked. And so because of that, it compels me to do something. And this text says what we ought to do. We ought to tell him. Now, I thank God that he uses the word when you don't tell anybody. The word tell means charisma. Don't tell anybody about my life. Don't tell anybody about my death. Don't tell anybody about my resurrection. You can understand why Jesus gives this leopard man limitations, because the third part of charisma had not occurred. So for him, he's telling him correctly, don't tell it yet, but you missed the point. The leopard man witnessed resurrection before Jesus got up. All right. Because he was written off. They said there's no hope for you, there's no healing for you, you'll never leave the community, but because of Jesus' love and care, he comes out. Yes. I want you to know, as long as you got Jesus on your case, you don't have to lose hope. Trust me, he's not going to come the way we want. He's not going to come on the schedule we have. Contrary to our charismatic brothers and sisters, he does not come just because you called him today. I don't care how much oil, how much yelling, how much hooping you give. If it's not your day today, it's not happening today. But those that wait upon the Lord shall have their strength renewed. And when your strength is renewed, You can't help but tell somebody what he did. Can you hear how this leopard man was telling folk down the road? Ha ha, thought you'd never see me again. What you doing with my sandals on like I never put them on? Give me my sandals back. I know you went through my house, pilferage through whatever you could get, whatever didn't look like it had my disease on it, you took it. Now I want it back. See, that's what happens in our lives. There are persons who want to give us their purpose for our lives, not God's purpose. Before I was ever shaped in my mother's womb, before Whittle B and Aretha Inez decided that they wanted to have another son, God knew I was going to be a preacher. But look at what I had to go through, rheumatic fever. Somebody pointing a gun at my face and pulling the trigger. Going through a list and a learning disorder called dyslexia. Going through all of these circumstances and hindrances, yet God called me to preach before any of it ever occurred. I had the choice to say, because I have a list and I can't pronounce my words, I can never be a preacher. Or I can look to the hills from whence cometh my help. Somebody needs to hear that this morning. Stop letting people determine your outcome by your present circumstance. God is in the midst of your life. And there is something greater. He has a purpose for you that no man, no woman, no entity, no demonic force can ever stop you from. But do know this. Just as sure as you have a purpose, God created you to do something to help somebody else, that you have to go through a period of death where you will actually question whether or not God even loves you. How dare him allow a man to manipulate me in a way in which a man ought not? How dare he and say he loves me? How dare a God who says he will protect me let a man put a gun in front of my face and pull the trigger? How dare he do that? I want you to know that you can't tell the story right unless a part of your story is, I was dead. I was on my way in the other direction. But thanks be to God this morning that your story with Jesus does not end with what he called you to be and the forces that hinder you from being. We can thank God today that there's a third part of your story. See, I can tell folk that I grew up with meager means, and because I'm poor, I shouldn't have access to the things I did. I still don't know. I believe it was Dr. E.D. McQuarrie, but I don't know. I don't know who paid for my tutoring at Virginia Union. I still to this day don't know. I just know I couldn't afford it. But I know that Dorothy Bruce taught me. I know that Pearl Mankins worked with me after school hours to help me put my words together. I don't know why they did it. I don't know the manner in which they were put in my life. I'm just going to call it divine assistance. Somebody in here needs to hear this. It's not always going to be your family that's going to be the one. God is going to send somebody that you have frowned your nose up at, that is going to be the very auspices under which you get your healing. How do you know when you're in trouble? In the midst of your trouble, God put an angel in the middle of the trouble. Daniel will tell you, I never would have known that a lion couldn't hurt me until I was put in a lion's den. 3 Hebrew boys would tell you, I never knew that a fiery furnace would not burn nor singe you until I was in a fire. Somebody would tell you out in that wilderness, I never would have known that poisonous vipers would not be the end of my life until I was out there in the wilderness and bitten by poisonous vipers. Samson would tell you, I never would have known that Delilah would put me back in touch with my God until I started that wandering eye. What am I saying to you today, church? I want you to know you got a story to tell. And it doesn't end with your trouble. It doesn't end with how many times and how many efforts you tried to get it done. Your story ends with a resurrection.